Hello there, I am Vivian, but you can call me Viv, the Queen of Darkness, in a good way, in case you didn't know that yet. And welcome to another Halloween special that's called a Halloween Boo Fest, which happens to take place in an alternate dimension on the same TV network, the Curious George universe. That's most likely commonly known as Curious George, and this Curious George Halloween special happens to be the third and last but not least from the series creators. For this review, I'm not going to hand out any spoilers like candy during the trick-or-treating part of Halloween. I'll do it eventually. For now, I'm going to kindly assume that most of you might have not seen this 2013 movie that's almost 60 minutes long. So now, let's begin the brief summary of the movie. It's about George's first Halloween in the country, where he discovers a local legend about No Knockin', which is the same name of a mysterious scarecrow. And is the same, you get it. And from there, George has a grand Halloween adventure. And there's also a few songs during George's All Hallows Eve journey that is full of October spirit. That's everything that you need to know without any of the spoilery stuff. And if that motivates some of you guys to go watch it on Hulu, or buy it, or get it at your local library for free in any way that you are able to, if some of you aren't motivated quite yet to see, or you already saw it, or you just want to watch this video, here's the rest of the video with a bunch of... Wait a minute, before I do, please vote for what kind of Thanksgiving video you would like to see in the iCard thing. And I want to get more than 2 votes. Thank you. And also, if you want Earth to continue to be a livable planet of marvelous trees that have the ability to change colors in the north part of the world, then please try to donate or ask your parent or guardian to donate $1 in order to make the world a more beautiful and breathable place at teamtrees.org. Or unless all you have is a moth in one of your pockets, or you can't convince your parent or guardian to donate a single buck, you can install Ecosia, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, to your Google Chrome. And with every 45 searches that you make from your curious soul, a single tree will be planted. All because of your marvelous curiosity of your hunger of knowledge. Not sponsored by either of them. And the 2 links will be located in the description below. Now, for real. Here is the rest of the video with a bunch of spoilers of all kinds. Be prepared. Are you doing alright, Raven? Doing alright, Beastie? And Willow? Are you okay? She's resting. I can't see her, I can only see her feet. Anyway, it starts out with a little cute sequence of George's imagination that is currently filled with spooky fun, with an instrumental cover of one of the most spookiest songs from the movie. And it ends with George flying on a broom with a lovely hat on his head with the fancy title showing up. #monkeys can be witches too. In the reality of the story, it begins on a sunny autumn day, with the man in the yellow hat raking the leaves, and Jumpy the squirrel gathering nuts, and George doing some monkey acrobats in order to help Jumpy with his acorn collecting. When George begins to help the man with the leaf raking, Mrs. Rakins rides on by saying something that confuses George. And maybe even some of you. Don't forget to hold on to your hats. Okay. Will it be windy? Then seconds later, George intentionally jumps into the pile of leaves for the 3rd time, which the man kindly gives George an errand to go find a pumpkin in order to prevent more of George's jumping into leaf piles habit, and also because the man is getting a sore back. George goes to the Rankin's pumpkin patch and looks for the perfect pumpkin. There he meets Bill, but most importantly, Allie, who is the awesome eccentric redhead who is George's best friend. During the first song, called Boo, Allie teaches George how to properly say boo and scare people. Okay. After the song is over, Bill says the strange saying again. Don't forget to hold on to your hats. With George confused again, and with Allie assuming that it's just a generic yearly saying. Bill proves them wrong by telling them the legend of No Noggin. Bill points over to a nearby tree that's creepy, but it's pretty to me, named Old Lonesome Tree, by the creek, where a farm used to be, but now gone, with the house no longer there. The farmer who used to live there was none other than Herbert Nininger, which happens to be Bill's great-great-uncle, who named one of the bunnies after him. And Herbert had a scarecrow who wore a hat, but had no head. And on every Halloween night, people who wore hats and happened to pass by had their hats kicked off by the headless scarecrow on every Halloween night. And that is how the saying came to be in order to keep your hat safe. On the way home, as George and Allie passes the yearly haunted tree and stops to look at it, George ponders on 3 things about the No Noggin legend. Why would a scarecrow want to kick hats? Why didn't he have a head? And why does it happen on Halloween night? George rushes home with his pumpkin in order to draw out his questions to the man in a single picture. The man debunks the legend since it's just a legend and shows evidence of why it can't be true. He shows George that the tree that No Noggin is supposed to stand beside is too far from the road, and shares his life experience of passing this tree every Halloween without losing a hat. Even though the legend was scary, George couldn't help but be sad that the legend isn't true, which is understandable. I would be too. George and the man head to the town to see the Boo Festival being set up. There they find out the prize for the costume contest is a leaf-sucking machine with a complicated name that would be perfect for the man having to rake them every time when George jumps into a pile, and helps the man with the sore back problem. With this new information on George's mind, he sets out on a quest to find the perfect costume while the second song is being played in the background, called It's Halloween Today, which is odd since it isn't Halloween quite yet for the characters in the story. I might be getting the name wrong. George and the man meet Mr. Delego, and Bill, which Mr. Delgo calls him William. Plot twist! Bull's true full name! But it's only the first name, not the last name, but it's still cool. Yeah. Mr. Delego and Bill debunk the man's debunking on the legend being true. And Mr. Delego says that he has a photo of the anthropomorphic scarecrow prankster. They find it, but the photo that they find doesn't have the creek running beside it, and the scarecrow has a head. Meaning that the evidence shows that the villainous legend is just a legend, which disappoints the characters. Back at home, George looks through the photo album that he somehow got to keep. Then the struggling man in the shrunken yellow sweater passes by George's doorway, instantly inspiring George to go as No Noggin, in order to win that complicated name for a leaf vacuum. Eventually, Curious George soon becomes Creative Genius George, when he finally creates his costume. While walking down the stairs, George accidentally drops the photo album, landing with its pages facing up with a map that parachutes out of it for some reason, which is cool. It's a map of the town, with Herbert's farm being highlighted in red, which is awesome because red symbolizes life. George asks where their house is. The man tries to find it, leading him to some confusion about where it is. They go to see Mr. and Mrs. Rankins, Ellie's grandparents, to have the confusion sorted into knowledge about where their house is. And with the photo, it shows that where Herbert and Ninger's farm used to be is where George and the man live. Plot twist! The three human characters reminisce hauntingly about times of them losing one or more of their hats by the tree, which the tree was shown innocently at the beginning of the film. Later that night, with this new spooky fact now soaked into their minds, their house doesn't feel the same as it used to be when they didn't know about this information, as they try to have fun during that night on the eve of Halloween. And the most spooky song of the entire movie starts to play as the two keeps getting scared. And the song is called Kinda Sorta Haunted House, making the happenings to the pair less scary for the audience. But if George and the man heard this song begun to play, they would be more scared than they already were when they couldn't hear it. They put aside their fear of the possibility of their house being haunted, sorta. But after Bill almost gives George a heart attack, a slight breeze reveals an envelope held upright between two pages of the book of mostly photographs. And maybe an obituary? I'm not sure. It happens to be a letter from Herbert's daughter, Hypatia. The letter that Hypatia wrote is a reply to the new owner of the farm, who asked her if it was haunted. And Hypatia tells the new owner all she knows. To sum up the short letter from Hypatia, it says, Scarecrow had the perfect pumpkin head. Deer stole the edible head on the morning of Halloween. No new replacement was as perfect as for the hat. People start to say headless Scarecrow got frustrated at being headless. They didn't like anyone else to wear a hat. So every night, it kicks hats off of the non-stolen heads of people and will not stop until it gets a new head. No proof that it's true, but that is the story that Hypatia heard. With a long-lost reason revealed to why No Noggin does this terrifying act, 3 questions about the legend that George had have been answered. George figures out a solution to ease the Scarecrow's frustrated pain of giving it a new head. But the photo of what the head looks like had been destroyed by pumpkin guts. It's kind of ironic. Later, the man gets attacked by No Noggin, who looks like George's costume for some reason, with the man in the yellow pajamas crying out the words, "You scare me, but that won't stop me." They discovered that it was the costume all along. Later on during the day of tomorrow, George and the man go to find the perfect pumpkin, and George wants them all. But the man says that they can't because they can't afford to buy them all. But Mr. Rankins allows to give them all for free if they can solve the lifting problem of the pumpkin that he's going to enter for the pumpkin contest into his truck. They were able to solve it and got all the pumpkins. The man and Mr. Rankins take the pumpkin to the festival, but it is too heavy for the truck. Both of them leave the 1-ton orange fruit on the road at the top of the hill and left to go get help, meaning that nothing will certainly happen to the 3,000 minus half a ton fruit. Nothing at all. George finds the perfect place to take the photo of the partially irritated headless non-human phantom at sunset. Then during the next scene shows George going around the Boo Festival costumeless with the man in the yellow banana costume. It's thankfully not the shade of unripe green. More of the second song, It's Halloween Today, plays as George and the man spends the Halloween day having a spooky, spirity, good time at the Boo Festival. George remembers the costume contest that he needs to enter, but then he remembers that he needs to take a picture of the headless anthropomorphic crow scarer in order to figure out the right head size to stop No Noggin's yearly hat-kicking terror. But if they succeed, they would have to give the non-human phantom a pumpkin head every Halloween, since pumpkins rot. And while I'm recording this, there's a pumpkin on the kitchen table, and it will probably turn into mold soon. That would be very interesting to see if the young duo are successful, for the satisfaction of No Noggin. Then No Noggin comes and walks toward George and Allie in a pointed hat that turns out to be Bill in a wizard or sorcerer costume. George and Allie uses Bill and his pointy wizard or sorcerer hat as the bait. In a swoosh and a flash of the camera, the hat has been kicked and kidnapped by the local legend, leading the monkey and the redhead to a cave. With the lack of courage from the two of them to know what to do about the cornered No Noggin, George remembers the man's bravery and brave words to the once assumed No Noggin, which were, "You scare me, but that won't stop me!" And with the man's unintentional advice to George, the little monkey braves his way into the cave, quickly takes the pictures of the crownless monster, and when they were able to get a good look of the picture, it was Jumpy the Squirrel. Dun dun dun! The cave was full of hundreds of hats, filled with thousands of acorns. In non-human squirrel chitters, Jumpy tells them the truth, even though they aren't able to understand a single chitter from him. But at least the loyal narrator of the show speaks squirrel. Jumpy had a great-great-uncle, whose name is Maurice for some reason. He didn't like his food covered in dirt when he is storing them away in the ground, and finds the perfect solution to steal hats off of people on a day where everyone wears the most headwear who happen to pass by the tree, which creates the local legend of No Noggin, and the tradition for future generations of a squirrel family, and maybe other local squirrels as well, I'm not sure. Without meaning to understand what Jumpy said, George and Allie figure out on their own that hats were stolen by squirrels. I am going to say something right now that I wanted to say when I was talking about the part when the man said it's just a legend. And the thing that I want to say is that legends are created from the truth. That is what a legend is. Legends are like historical fiction. Part of it is true, but most of it is not. But for the sake of the No Noggin legend, it was squirrels all along, in order to keep their acorns clean. Allie wants to tell people that the scary legend of No Noggin isn't real, but only George knows the consequence, which would lead to a sad wave of disappointment. George remembers that he needs to enter the costume contest. While wearing his No Noggin costume, he brings the special thing to add to his awesome costume. He accidentally scares Bill with his somehow believable No Noggin costume. It might be because of, can't say the word right here because I don't know what it is, where you're able to see something in the dark that's not actually what it is. I think I'm explaining it correctly. You can look up the definition if you want to. which makes all the Pumpkinhead options for the once believed non-human phantom tear away from their safe stillness into an army of orange, which leads to Mr. Rankin's impossible and possibly prize-winning edible orange boulder to tumble. I told you guys nothing will certainly happen to the
3,000
minus 1 ton fruit. Nothing at all. Did you believe me? Everyone runs away from their possible doom. That won't happen because this movie is TVY rated. Let's change the subject. Everyone is saved thanks to the superhero team of the writer and the TVY rating of this movie. But then, freeze!
Sorry, howdy.
George figures out what really happened while everyone believes that it was no noggin. And he allows them all to have faith in the town's most famous, and possibly only, legend from the disaster he accidentally caused. There is a sweet moment when George shows his no-noggin costume to the man in the yellow hat that you guys have to see for yourself. Since I'm not able to describe it better or in the same way than the perfectly shown moment. During the costume contest, there is a tie between Mr. Quint and George. I don't know how they have the budget to have a tie and give them both the same prize. And at the beginning, I remember Ada saying that it's the most powerful leaf vacuum in the world. So that means it's very expensive, and gave them the same prize. I guess that's why they forgot the area of where Herbert's farm really was, and also the reason of why people once believed about details of the legend that they created, and forgotten them through time of why the legend kicks has. Do you know what I'm thinking about, everyone? This is hard. Our choices are either to have a book published about the legend of the hat-kicking scarecrow and where it resides, or have the option to give 2 expensive autumn leaf-related prizes for the costume contest in case there is a tie. You're right. The 2 expensive autumn-related prizes for future costume contests, in case there is a tie, is more important than keeping the knowledge of the historical area and the belief of the headless scarecrow for future generations of the town to come. Does everyone agree? After Mr. Quint and George had both won their own leaf vacuums, someone with red hair in the crowd shouts, "Recount! Recount!" After they didn't listen to the lovely person in the black steampunk outfit, hijinks ensues when George causes more chaos, with the Kurtzberg 828 recharging electric suckerpator. George smiles during most of the chaos that he is creating. George and everyone in the town who aren't trick-or-treating that evening for some reason all live happily ever after. The end. For this review, I won't be handing out a grade because I sorta, but a little bit, I don't believe in grades that involve opinions about creative stuff. All I will do is express how I feel about this movie. It is a really good movie. There had been 2 really good twists, and my favorite twist was the first one that had a tiny bit of foreshadowing at the very beginning and a moment in the first act. And for the second twist, there had been foreshadowing with Jumpy the squirrel, and there was also a red herring when George believed that Jumpy's habit of running away from everything so fast that he wouldn't be able to notice Herb's scarecrow. Little did he know that Jumpy had a secret that will remain a secret in order to make the townspeople happy. And the future of his headwear thieving crime will not be prevented in order to make the townspeople happy. Once you think about it, this ending is a little dark. Besides the unfair shark's justice, the main dark part of the ending is oblivion. Oblivion of the town of not knowing the truth of who is actually kidnapping the hats. And in order to prevent the crime and their fear, because to them it's like being on a roller coaster. And for future passerbyers of Jumpy's tree who aren't so lucky to hold onto their hats, they would have lost a hat that they might have really liked, and I assume that hats are expensive, and if one or many people lost a hat every year, it will make a small dent in their piggy bank or bank account. In order to fulfill Jumpy's greed of hats for his greed of acorns. But I'm probably thinking too much in the depth of the philosophy of oblivion. While writing the script, I realized that my name rhymes with that word, which is cool. Anyway, it is a very sweet ending in many ways with a little oblivious chaos, with a great story and mystery. And even when the mystery is solved during the middle part of the movie, it isn't solved until they find the true culprit. And at the end of the movie, the town and even George don't know the full origin story of the Haddings. Only us, the audience, are able to know what happened. Thanks to the narrator who kindly translates or at least knows about the backstory and shows it to us. And better than my philosophy of oblivion that I briefly told you about. And with a lore that can easily compete and win over the lore in It's a Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. But without comparing with anything else, it is an awesome movie to watch during the month of Halloween. Or whenever you want to get into the spooky spirit during the other 11 non-Halloween months. In a non-horror, spooky, and lovely movie. And George Fallon, also known as George... What? And Joe Fallon wrote the entire movie. He also helped write the songs Boo and Kinda Sorta Haunted House. No big deal. I hope all of you who haven't watched this 2013 masterpiece will be motivated to give this a chance. And to have your very own thoughts that will be alternative to mine. If you already watched this special once or twice or more in your lifetime, I hope you enjoyed this video during the 11th month of the year, because you can have the spooky spirit in November as well. Remember to vote for the next video that will hopefully come out around Thanksgiving in the iCard. And don't forget about those 2 tree planting related links that will be located in the description below. That's all I have to say. And have a glorious, wondrous, marvelous, and maybe even a spooky, curious day of gaining new knowledge. Farewell. Blah, 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 sore throat. Not gonna talk anymore.